Madam Secretary, could you call roll this evening?
I'll call the roll tonight, and please let the record show that all planning commissioners are present.
Thank you. And commissioners, if we can review the meeting minutes from last meeting.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, and can we do a roll vote?
Yes. Chair Opal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Donor,
Aye.
and Commissioner Murphy.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, please note that that passed unanimously. So for this evening, do we have any requests for public comment for any item that is currently not on our agenda?
No, Chair Opal.
Thank you. Moving on, we have no consent calendar this evening, no public hearing this evening. So we are going to be moving on to old business. So this evening, we're going to conduct a workshop regarding enhanced regulations regarding affecting short-term rentals. So with that, Brenda, do we have a staff report this evening?
Yes, you do. I'll provide a few words before turning it over to John Champa and Jeff Rossler. First, thank you all for joining us tonight. This is the first time the city's been having a public forum with the Zoom format. So, so far so good, but we appreciate the great turnout. So as you know, this is a discussion of short-term rentals. This is our first public workshop with the Planning Commission related to this issue. And it's the first of several. Tonight's discussion will be purely a discussion about short-term rental regulations. No formal action will be taken, and there will be several opportunities in the future for you to continue to participate with us. We received several written comments, and as is the practice for the Planning Commission, those have been made part of the public record. They were distributed to the Planning Commission prior to tonight's meeting and have been attached to the agenda for tonight so that it is part of the public record that you can access yourself. You can go ahead and take a look at those letters that will continue to be part of the process as we move forward. So as I mentioned, tonight is the first discussion talking about short-term rental regulations. What we've done is broken down the process into two phases. The first being basically how can we enhance how we are enforcing the rules for short-term rentals. Tonight's discussion will not be talking about if we should have short-term rentals or where they should be or what do they look like. That is what we're reserving for phase two. I know several of you have an opinion you want to express, and there will be opportunity to voice that opinion later in the meeting. We have a short presentation for you that will be going over the history of short-term rentals, as well as some of our history of enforcement actions. And lastly, some results of our subcommittee. Vice Chair Nelson and Chair Donor have been part of the subcommittee and working in the past few months on what type of regulations that the city should be considering. So John Champa will go over that in more detail. And lastly, like I said, that after the presentation, when the Planning Commission is done asking questions, we will be providing the public an opportunity to speak, just 3 minutes like you do in the chamber. And what we're going to ask you to do is use the reaction button at the bottom to raise your hand. So when that time comes about, you'll be called upon to state your 3 minutes, and Stacy will be monitoring that time frame. So she'll let you know when that 3 minutes is coming up. And more importantly, because it is a workshop, we are documenting your comments. We're looking forward to having some details of what we hear from you tonight, and those will be presented to the Planning Commission at their next meeting so that they can see a compilation of what they've heard from public tonight, as well as stakeholders and the subcommittee itself. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John Champa and Jeff Rossler.
Okay, sorry about that. I think I was muted. So before you be presenting the presentation along with Jeff Ross, our Community Development Manager. So it's important to provide to you a little background in terms of the history of short-term rentals within the city. They've been historically part of the city for many decades. Additionally, the Coastal Commission is the regulatory authority of land uses within the coastal zone. And they do see that short-term rentals are a part of improving and providing coastal access to the community. So it's essential that the city is in compliance with the Coastal Act. Back in 2016, a short-term rental ordinance was approved by the city council and then later rescinded as a result of a referendum petition submitted by the community, some of the community residents. The city council allowed the existing short-term rental permits to continue operating until an alternative ordinance was adopted. Back in 2018, the city council wanted to pursue addressing short-term rentals again within the community and formed a subcommittee of 2 of the city council members to evaluate short-term rentals and guide the development of a new ordinance. The subcommittee met with Coastal Commission staff on a number of occasions and researched short-term rental ordinances in and outside of the coastal zone to consider appropriate regulations and best management practices that could be incorporated into the city of Dana Point's short-term rental ordinance. 2 surveys were also conducted to obtain community input, the most recently being approximately 1 year ago, which was a statistically valid survey conducted by the city's consultant firm. Both of the surveys are available on the city's short-term rental webpage. In discussions with the Coastal Commission staff, they had recommended that the city consider a short-term rental pilot program because of the community sensitivity to the issue. They identified the benefits to a program such as that, and that it would give flexibility to establish and modify regulations outside the city's zoning ordinance, and as well as provide that the program would be temporary, in effect for 3 years, and would be approved by a coastal development permit. Following that would require an amendment to the city's local coastal program, which would then require approval not only by the city council, but also the Coastal Commission. On July in 2020, staff shared the Coastal Commission's recommendation of a pilot program with the city council, and they directed staff and the Planning Commission to move forward with a public outreach program to consider the development of a short-term rental pilot program. Key components that they requested that staff and the Planning Commission consider were for the pilot program were to evaluate all types of short-term rentals, as well as establish a robust enforcement program to address potential impacts to the community and ensure that short-term rentals can be compatible with the residential neighborhoods. As part of that, staff and the subcommittee developed a 2-phased approach for moving forward with the city council's direction, in that they develop new and enhanced regulations for the existing short-term rentals and focus on increasing penalties and addressing community concerns related to parking, noise, and trash, which were some of the key issues that were identified as part of the community surveys and public outreach. So that would make up phase 1, which is where we are at right now. Upon completion of that, phase 2 would be for the consideration of the development of a short-term rental pilot program, for the issuance of potentially additional permits with enhanced regulations and best management practices. The standards and regulations that would be included would be a result of the public input through the outreach process. The program would allow for flexibility to establish and refine those regulations to ensure that these uses are compatible with the neighborhood, as previously stated. The Planning Commission formed a subcommittee or a short-term rental subcommittee on September 28, 2020, which was formed with 2 of our planning commissioners to conduct public outreach and identify enhanced regulations for phase 1 and phase 2. Now, only phase 1 has begun, so the efforts have been solely focused on phase 1, which is the enhancement of the regulations to the existing short-term rentals. And those actions to date include developing a public outreach program, researching short-term rental regulations for not only communities within the coastal zone, but also without or outside of the coastal zone, producing informational flyers, updating the city's short-term rental webpage, developing a GIS map and short-term rental contact list for communities with concern or community residents with concerns looking to contact the operators directly, conducting short-term rental stakeholder meetings, and recommending regulations and identifying them for discussion this evening. So the stakeholder meetings were held in January, approximately 30 days ago. And the stakeholder groups were formed from different groups with different perspectives on short-term rentals to get their input as far as appropriate regulations for phase 1. The stakeholder groups that were formed included permit holders, short-term rental management companies, neighbors, and community groups. The meetings and recordings of these meetings, as well as the minutes, are placed on the city's short-term rental webpage. The phase 1 standards and regulations that are recommended and should be considered this evening are have been guided by the public outreach process. And with that, I'll hand it over to the community development manager, Jeff Rossler, who will be going over some of the short-term rental code enforcement statistics for the city.
So as John stated, in 2016, the city started to issue permits for short-term rentals. I think in the highest point, we probably had close to 200 permits across the city. As the time of this map was conducted, there was 144 permits still active. So while the referendum petition was passed over to City Council decided to continue to let the permits that were being held to continue to operate. Through time, that number has dropped and there's been an attrition of those permits. And so what you see on the map today is the 144 existing permits at the time the map was made. And you can see how they're distributed across the town pretty equally. There's a majority in districts 5 and districts 4 and districts 3. This breaks it down a little bit more where you're looking at District 4 with 31%. District 5, which is Capo Beach, is divided there between Beach Road and Capo Beach itself. But there is about 42% of the permits in that area, and District 1 is carrying about 20% of the permits. This shows you how the permits have collected transient occupancy tax over time. You can see that the number of permits collecting taxes was as high as 165, and that dropped to 142 in 2019. There were other permits still out there, but they just weren't collecting TOT at the time. That's why that number is below that 144 threshold. You can also see how the permits have dropped and fallen off through time, but the TOT has actually increased over time as well. So the team that we have out here is responsible, our code enforcement team, for enforcing 5.38 of the Dana Point Municipal Code. And you can see these are the number of code cases we've done through the years beginning in 2016. You'll notice that the majority of the cases that were conducted were for advertising for a short-term rental without a permit. If you don't have a permit, it's considered a violation of 5.38. And we will send you a notice of violation and or citations if you continue to violate that section. Late TOT, there was a number of cases for those folks who have permits but were late sending the city their quarterly TOT. And at the very bottom there, you'll see the nuisance at permanent STRs with very low numbers each year going, actually increasing in 2020 for whatever that's worth. Here you'll see some specifics on the 2020 nuisance calls. The city operates a 24/7 vacation rental hotline. Those numbers go into a live person 24/7 hours a day. And then they send us an email to code enforcement where we can follow up on these. You'll notice that in 2020 of those 9 nuisance code enforcement cases, only 4 resulted in actual citations. And one of those properties, or one property, had 3 out of those 4 citations. So of the 144 permanent properties at the end of 2020, 142 of those properties had 0 citations, and 2 properties had all 4 citations, with one of them having 3. You can also see that citations for music, excessive noise, trash, and parking, that only excessive noise is what constituted a violation and caused those citations to be written. And that concludes the code enforcement aspect and the data that we have, but I'm happy to, I'm available to answer any questions when the presentation is over.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to pick back up and go over the city's current regulations and additional regulations that have been identified for phase 1 consideration. These have all been guided by the efforts of the subcommittee, as well as input from the stakeholder meetings that occurred earlier this year. So first up is parking, which stated all of these sections have been identified as key concerns by the community based on previous public outreach. So with that parking, the current regulation requires a 1 space per bedroom with a maximum of 2 spaces. However, the director may approve additional spaces depending on the site conditions and context. Additional regulations that are up for consideration are requiring guests to park in the garage or the driveway for the short-term rental unit to free up street parking. Noise regulations is also an item of community concern. And to go over the current regulations that are in section 3. Within the short-term rental regulations currently, that the owner shall ensure that the tenants do not create unreasonable noise disturbances or engage in disorderly conduct, as well as take any measures necessary to abate disturbances, including contacting the tenant, law enforcement, or code enforcement, potentially evicting the tenant, or other methods necessary. Actions must be taken to prevent the reoccurrence within a 24-hour period. Additional regulations that are up for consideration are prohibiting noise between the hours of 10 p.m. and 9 a.m., restricting any amplified noise that can be heard at any property or at the property line at any time, and establishing a maximum decibel level to establish a threshold for noise complaints, as well as requiring the installation of noise monitors after a first noise violation. Next item up is trash. The current regulations for trash shall be that trash should be stored in containers and only visible during the hours of 5 p.m. prior to the day of trash service, and removed at 8 a.m. the day following trash collection. The owner shall also provide sufficient trash collection for the unit. Additional regulations for consideration are walk-up trash service that's provided by CR&R, which is, staff was able to confirm that that is a service they provide at $40 a month. Additional regulations that are outside of the key trash, noise, and parking that have been identified as part of the public outreach process include increasing fines, requiring guests to sign an acknowledgement of the good neighbor rules, increasing the minimum renter age, which is currently at 18 to 25, making the owner or manager contact information available to the public. That owners and managers should respond to complaints within 20 minutes, requiring short-term rental permits to be provided on all advertisements, post short-term rental regulations on the inside of units, and consider that some violations should not be reset annually. Additional comments that were received as a result of the stakeholder meetings were that the city should continue to extend the code enforcement hours during peak seasons to address evening complaints, as well as include long-term renters and hotels as stakeholders to ensure a vast public outreach. And lastly, to consider additional methods to track and collect transit occupancy tax. The next steps as part of the short-term rental process under the City of Dana Point is to draft short-term rental business regulations from the municipal code, which is regulated under section 5.38 based on the Planning Commission direction this evening, as well as followed by a Planning Commission to consider forwarding the draft regulations to City Council for adoption. And upon completion of that, which is phase 1, moving forward with phase 2 with the subcommittee to kick it off with the continuation of stakeholder meetings, public outreach, and Planning Commission briefings. That concludes staff's presentation for the short-term rental Planning Commission workshop. And with that, I will hand it back over to Chair Opal to continue the meeting.
Great, thank you, Jeff and John, for your reports. Before we open it up for public comments, I want to take it to the commissioners to see, do you guys have any specific comments of staff from their report before we move forward?
Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair Nelson. I don't have any questions for staff at this point.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Donor or Murphy, any questions?
Nothing at this point, no.
No, thank you. I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. So we're going to open it up for public comment. So just a reminder, if you would like to comment, at the bottom of your screen is the reaction. So please raise your hand, and then either Allison or Stacy will be calling your name to speak. Remember that your comments are limited to 3 minutes maximum, and be respectful of time because we have nearly 70 some people of the public here. So if you all want to speak, it's going to be a little while. So if you want to raise your hands, and Stacy, Allison, do you want me to call names arbitrarily, or do you guys want to do it? Please advise.
We'll go ahead and call them.
Pardon me?
Oh, sorry, we'll call their names out. Allison, are you able to call them out?
Yes, Alan Bell. If you would unmute your mic.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you see me?
No.
How do I do that? Let's see.
Why don't you just go ahead and give us your comment?
Wait a minute. Hold on, I could start the video.
There you go.
Do you see me now?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, great. Can I begin?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Alan Bell from Capistrano Beach. I believe the Planning Commission has this process completely backwards. If you really want an effective pilot program, how about first asking, do full-time unsupervised mini hotels make sense in the residential areas? Here's a clue. Just about every Dana Point HOA says no. Why would you think that those who don't live in HOAs would say yes? And here's another clue. Just look at the 4,000 signatures that were gathered in less than 3 weeks overturning the 2016 ordinance. Dana Point's current zoning does not allow businesses to operate in residential areas. You can't allow retail stores or barbershops or mini hotels in our neighborhoods without changing zoning as we were promised when we bought our homes. The city has permissible zoning. This means that anything not explicitly permitted is not allowed. Rentals of less than 30 days are illegal. Let's make this abundantly clear. You are proposing a change in the property rights of every homeowner in Dana Point in order to grant new property rights to short-term rental investors, most of whom don't even live in Dana Point. The existing STRs are actually violating our zoning. There is no legal basis for letting them operate for 7 years. And now council will grant them at least another 3 years? What a boon to these 144 out-of-town investors, most of whom don't even live or vote here. They must be very special people indeed. And why won't they allow us to vote on SDRs? Federico, Mueller, Vizorek voted in July to deny citizens a right on a zoning change that will affect the quality of life and property values for every resident in Dana Point. I find this stunning. Other cities have councils that actually work for residents. So why does Dana Point's city council seem to put residents last? Does it have anything to do with real estate and developer PACs that so heavily supported their elections, buying ugly smear ads to degenerate pro-resident candidates? Let's be clear, STRs are a nuisance for residents. We didn't want them in 2016, and we certainly don't want them now. Who would knowingly risk the quiet enjoyment of their home or its property value by moving next door to a full-time SDR? How about putting residents first for a change? Here's our pledge to you. If council won't protect us, we will overturn this and
That was your
recall
3
them
minutes.
personally. I hope they govern themselves accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't mean to interrupt, but on my reactions, I do not have a hand raised.
Okay, Lynn, we'll go ahead. Was that Lynn that was speaking?
Yes, thank you. I don't know why.
We'll go ahead and add you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Jonah Breslaw. Will you please unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jonah Breslaw. I'm here today as a researcher at LANE, the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, and I'm speaking as well in support of Unite Here Local 11, the Hospitality Workers Union. LANE is an advocacy organization dedicated to supporting good jobs and healthy communities throughout the Southern California region. We urge Dana Point to pursue the strongest and most enforceable measures possible to minimize the impacts of short-term rentals on jobs in the hospitality industry, housing, and neighborhood character. Laguna Beach, for example, restricted short-term rentals to commercial areas only, with only a limited number of whole home rentals allowed. And we believe that Dana Point should go further and not allow any new short-term rental permits unless the host is present in the home, while still restricting these new permits to commercial areas or coastal zones. Whole home rentals remove necessary housing from the market, take business from the hotel industry, and are more likely to become nuisances or party houses than properties where the host resides on site. In contrast, if the host lives there, a SDR permit might help the host stay in their home while providing affordable access to the coast for visitors. Fundamentally, the residential character of neighborhoods will change when long-term tenants are replaced by short-term tourists. But in mixed-use areas, we believe this impact can be diminished by the on-site host requirements. It's important to support our businesses during this time, and as you will hear, that includes the hospitality industry and the hotel industry in particular, which is in dire straits at the moment. And we need to make sure that we're not allowing an under-regulated channel of competition that hurts workers and businesses at a time when they are struggling most. The best way to protect residents and businesses in Dana Point is for the city to utilize the best enforcement tools available, such as platform accountability, private rights of action for neighbors, and dedicated enforcement staff. Cities have been successful in removing many illegal units from the market by requiring platforms to disclose information regarding host activity, in addition to fines for platforms for any listing that is found not to be registered with the city. Platform accountability provisions would partially relieve the burden of enforcement from the city staff and place it on the platforms and hosts. Additionally, city ordinances have provided authority for the issue of subpoenas on platforms to ensure that cities have the data they need for efficient and effective enforcement of their ordinances. Another provision that we think can be really powerful is a private right of action, so that affected neighbors can contribute to the enforcement process by bringing civil suits to address non-compliance, which can also help relieve some of the city's burden of enforcement. And finally, we do think it's important to have dedicated staff, which it sounds like the city is doing, but we think this is a continuing point of importance. And we encourage you to have registration fees and other fees necessary to fund the staff to ensure that these kinds of regulations are effective. So in total, we urge you to pass strong regulations to restrict short-term rentals to only those where the host lives and is present on site, and to restrict the areas where this is permitted, to have a bright line rule that protects neighborhoods, businesses, and workers in the community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jonah.
Okay, next up is Jer Derlashon. Can you please unmute?
Hello, hope everyone can hear me. Good evening. Would like to add our voice. My wife and I are 20+ year residents of Dana Point, and we believe very strongly with both previous speakers, Mr. Bell and Joshua, in the sentiment that they expressed. We're in an HOA community, and we have here, and I'm on the board of the HOA, we have here rules that prohibit less than 30-day rentals. And when we took our concerns for some short-term rentals to the city of Dana Point, what we heard was that, well, it's really not a CC&R, so we granted the permit to the homeowner, out-of-area homeowner, non-occupant, to run the short-term rental. So here we are with a short-term rental that is putting in our little community a new occupant, a transient occupant throughout the year. And in our case, my wife and I have had luggage delivered to our home at 12:30 in the morning that was meant for some other short-term rental. And there are pool area violations, parking violations galore. And so our summary is that we have an HOA, we have a rule, a published rule that the homeowner that bought this home got a copy of, that said 30 days or less on rentals is not permitted, who does not come to meetings when asked to talk to us, who does not pay fines that are levied by the HOA. And we have a city that seems so far unwilling to help us with our case. We're here to ask that HOA representatives, board members, or residents be included as stakeholders in this discussion, and that the HOA's position be taken seriously. No HOA that we know of wants short-term renters in their communities. And we would like to see very strong regulations, and we would like to see in our community the city to revoke the permit for this short-term renter and not allow any future short-term renters in this community. Thanks.
Okay, next is Mark. Mark, if you can please unmute and please state your last name.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Mark Zanitas. I live in the Lantern District. I wholeheartedly endorse the comments of Mr. Bell and Mr. Breslaw. And the last speaker, I'm afraid I didn't get his name. It's quite interesting that the staff thus far has not included as stakeholders the hotels and HOAs. It's critical that they be involved because notwithstanding that some TOTs are collected, it's not clear to me, and in fact, I strongly suspect that the TOT tax is simply displaced tax that otherwise would have been paid to the hotels. I want to make a couple of other comments. Mr. Ciampa, I think, said that the goal was to ensure that regulations of the STRs make them compatible with neighborhoods. Here's the fundamental problems. STRs are not compatible with residential neighborhoods, nor would a massage parlor, a bowling alley, or any other business. We are zoned in the Lantern District to be residential, not a business. No matter how regulated, well regulated, and they're not well regulated, as the last speaker explained, and I'll address that in a moment. They're not well regulated, but no matter how regulated, it's a fundamental change in the character of the residential experience that we all enjoy so far in Dana Point. Essentially, the soul of the city is at issue here. And it does seem, as Mr. Bell pointed out, that the city council is interested in serving the interests of foreign investors and not the residents of Dana Point. There should be a vote on whatever regulations, as appears inevitable that this planning commission will come up with, irrespective of the views of the 4,000 of us who signed the referendum and overturned the regulation in 2016, which, by the way, wasn't put on the ballot because the council then well knew that the city would reject it. It is not, by the way, the case, as Mr. Rossler said, that the STRs are more or less equally divided across the city. 72% of them are in Capo and in the Lantern District. We have now a district-wide scheme that was foisted on us by the city council, apparently, or supported by the claim that voters were disenfranchised, particularly Hispanic voters. There should be a vote on STRs, and my suggestion is that the vote be by district. Why? Because in my district, in Capo Beach District, in each of our districts.
That's like 3 minutes, Mark.
Okay, there should be district voting. Otherwise, there should be no STRs.
Okay, Greg Lynn, you're next. Will you please unmute your mic?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm a resident in the, basically, you're right off Strand Beach, and I live in a small HOA of 8 units. And we have 3 units here that do short-term rentals. And I voiced the same comments that Mr. Bell said earlier, and several of the other subsequent speakers said, that without having on-site management, without having the owner here, it is literally a hotel with no management. The city would not allow a hotel to operate without management on site 24/7. Why in God's earth are you allowing these short-term rentals to operate in an HOA environment, any environment, without any kind of on-site management? It is incumbent. The short-term rentals are charging the same as a hotel room, yet they're providing no oversight, no guidance, nothing. I mean, I can spend the next 45 minutes going over story after story after story here on how the short-term rentals come in here. It's a big party scene, and we go ahead and you file a complaint with the city. Well, guess what? Most of the time the noise complaints happen after 5 o'clock. There's no one to complain to, and it just gets dealt with the next day, and things just continue on. And it's incumbent on the city to insist that if you're going to do a short-term rental, that you have on-site management, you have the owner there to manage their tenant. They're making a lot of money off of it. We have an oceanfront property, making a lot of money on it. They're creating a huge disturbance to every resident that's here. And there's a pool, there's no lifeguard here. The kids are, sometimes the parents even are not even watching the kids when they're in the pool. And it's just an unbelievable risk and exposure for us, and it's a nuisance, and it's really created a rift among the owners that live and use their property, and we don't get quiet enjoyment of our property because the city is enabling the short-term the STRs to operate unregulated motels without management, without oversight, without security. It's insanity. And how you guys get along well with it is obviously, as one of the first gentlemen said, there's obviously PAC money and other monies coming in that that city council is coming out. But the city council represents the citizens of Dana Point. They don't represent all the folks that are running the short-term rentals. And yes, all of ours are out of Dana Point investors that own here, and they have a real estate company that books it, and people just show up, and it's just completely out of control. The answer is, and I think the city needs to turn this around. The answer is that if you want to operate a hotel, then you need to either operate it in a business district, and you need to provide on-site management, because this is just insanity what's gone on here. And now they're like,
for 3 minutes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl Nauman, will you please unmute your mic?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl, and I'm a resident of Dana Point, and I do not have a vacation rental here, but I have run a vacation rental previously in another state for 14 years. I also helped in that particular community with the Planning Commission to also create regulations and ordinances that would basically kind of oversee the vacation rentals, but also assure the seamless integration of vacation rentals into neighborhoods, which was very important. I think the key with ordinances is to balance property rights with the desire of residents to enjoy their properties free of nuisances. I actually did live in the community where I had my rental, and most of the vacation rental owners did as well. I think the key is that a lot of the vacation owners are individuals who have occupied the home or intend to occupy the home in retirement, which was my plan, except I decided to retire here instead. So, but that was my intent. And so the key is that you have to create rules that apply to all residents equally. As a vacation rental owner, for example, I did things to mitigate complaints because I cared very much for my neighbors, and I wanted to make sure there were no issues. So I had clauses in my rental agreement that said things such as receipt of a neighbor complaint would result in your immediate eviction and the forfeiture of all amounts paid, including your deposit. Not once in 14 years did I ever have a neighbor complaint. I also had a minimum age of 26, which was key. So I think you're headed down the right track in terms of the things you're proposing. The other thing about short-term rentals is they tend to be maintained to a higher degree than sometimes other homes that are permanent residents. I know at the same time I had my own home and I had a vacation rental home. If there was a little scratch in a window or anything, it would get maintained because I wanted it to be hotel ready. Whereas my own house, there was a torn screen, there were things that weren't painted, but I had to maintain my short-term rental to high degrees of quality. And I was in it constantly and checking. That was really important. So again, the average clientele of a short-term rental tend to be homeowners themselves. They tend to be very meticulous. I've had people fix things while they're in my vacation rental. Very different than a long-term renter and the socioeconomic kind of tendencies of a long-term rental versus a property owner who is renting a $300 or $400 a night home. They tend to be very careful. And so I think that's a key. There's very much of a difference. Discerning visitors that come want a clean, spotless property that's free of blight, that has no trash issues, et cetera. And so they're expecting that vacation rental owner to keep to a high degree of standards. I would dispute what some of the others said about whole home rentals versus somebody just that's renting somebody's bedroom. Again, very different socioeconomic differences, et cetera. Somebody who can
Carol, that's your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. You know, it's just a little bit different. So I think you're absolutely right in looking at having an ordinance that's effective. I think you need to enforce noise, trash, blight, nuisance, all of that. And I think the complaints that you've seen are so minimal that they speak for themselves. What you're doing is working.
Barbara Wilson, will you please unmute your mic?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, the purpose of this meeting is to gather input to improve regulations on short-term vacation rentals under the false assumption that this will make them acceptable in residential neighborhoods. It seems that we have the cart before the horse. Before considering how to regulate an STR program, should you not first determine whether they are wanted at all and in which areas might they be appropriate? If Dana Point's program will include properties in the coastal zone, it is necessary to consult the California Coastal Commission, which has legal jurisdiction. The Director of Planning has confirmed that a coastal development permit hearing at the Coastal Commission is necessary before a pilot program can be enacted. Why then did Council strike the language from the resolution they passed in July 21st, 2020 Council meeting? It's their intention to circumvent the Coastal Commission. The city attorney, when questioned by Councilman Wyatt in the same meeting, clearly suggested that a move would be technically illegal, but that didn't stop the council from striking any such reference after comments decrying what they called the Coastal Commission's interference. Some have referenced the notion that the Coastal Commission has given us a special opportunity to expand STRs through a 3-year pilot program. It was abundantly clear that the opportunity suggested by the coastal staff in their meeting with former council members Lewis and Wyatt was limited to a pilot program for homestays only. The Coastal Commission recently approved an ordinance in Laguna Beach, which limits new STRs to homestays and a small percentage in mixed use and commercial areas. They have completely shifted their stance they held years ago, understanding that California's need for public access to beaches should not interfere with the city's requirement to provide ample housing stock for residents. In suggesting that the Coastal Commission is now fine with expanding the pilot program to include all forms of STRs, including full-time investor-owned rentals, the council clearly stepped out of bounds. Now they're suggesting that holding a public workshop during a pandemic to attempt to strengthen code enforcement regulations will somehow make the program palatable to residents. The majority of residents surveyed, along with the 4,000 who voted against them in 2016, clearly feel that this is not the solution. Even perfectly enforced mini hotels are still unsupervised mini hotels. Who would want one next to their primary residence? The Planning Commission is well aware of legal zoning requirements, and I therefore ask you tonight, does a 3-year pilot program require Coastal Commission approval or not? Thank you very much.
Tim, will you please unmute your mic and state your last name?
Yes, hi, my name is Tim and my last name is Hines. And I live in Dana Point, over by Dana Strands as well, in the Nigel Beach Terrace area there. And have been a resident in and out of Dana Point since the early 70s. So I've seen quite a bit here. My first thing I'd just like to say is that I was wondering how the survey was done, because I haven't spoken with anyone who received a survey. So maybe if you guys could provide how many people you surveyed and and how you went about that, what process. You know, there's a lot of economic surveys they do out there. So I was wondering exactly how those surveys were handled. The other thing I'd like to say is that Nigel Beach Terrace, about 4 years ago, we have 380 units over here that are, you know, right at the beach. And this place was just a complete nightmare. There's no way to monitor it. People would be checking in and out on a daily basis at all hours, catching flights, trying to get taxis, multiple families staying, and there's really no way to monitor it unless you want to have a camera on them 24 hours a day. So basically, I'm just wondering who you surveyed, because there's a lot of problems in Dana Point with these. You guys are saying there's no problems. There's a lot of problems. And I think we should at least put a 1-year moratorium on even thinking about doing anything in Dana Point, because again, it's the pandemic. Nobody can come and talk to you. You know, this is kind of an unusual way to be handling this. But, you know, basically, what I know you're building a lot in Dana Point. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of new structures showing up. Dana Point's doing a lot of new things. Why don't you folks do it with the new construction? So at least the people who are in the new construction will know, hey, I'm getting into a short-term rental place. This is going to be like a hotel. There's going to be people checking in and out on a daily basis, parties all week or weekend or whatever they want to do. Everybody does it. It's fine. You don't care. They all fit together. But trying to mix this with families who live here, which I own property and I've owned it since, you know, the 80s, which I'm happy. But my kids and their friends, they can't even rent a place here anymore. They're going to have to move away from Dana Point. And this is not going to help the kids of Dana Point who can't buy a piece of property. Maybe they'll inherit it from their parents, but you know, you're just forcing the kids out of Dana Point. These kids who grew up here, you're going to make them move because all the investors,
that was your 3 minutes.
they're going to buy all the property and we're going to, the rent's skyrocketing. So I don't know, you guys talk about housing. We got a housing problem here, this and that. Nobody can afford the rent. Well, you're going to make it a lot more expensive for all these kids. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fred, will you please unmute your mic and state your last name?
Hello, everybody. Fred Ross, and we're part-time residents in Dana Point. We own a couple properties down there. And I just wanted to comment on a couple things. Number one, on the phase 1 in terms of regulations, it seems like a lot of people are getting really upset and all worked up over the fact that we've had, oh, how many was that? 0 citations on most of the short-term rental properties. I beg to differ that there's a lot of problems with short-term rentals. If you just look at the facts, there's very few complaints, very few cases. In fact, there was nine cases since you guys started tracking in 2016. That doesn't sound like a huge problem. We want to talk about problems in Dana Point. Let's talk about the 310 cases of theft. Let's talk about the 179 cases of assault. Let's talk about the 298 narcotics laws violations. You guys want to talk about real problems? Good, let's talk about real problems. But somebody coming here with a family that wants to come and enjoy your city is not the problem. How many of you have taken a 30-day vacation? Who can afford that? Do you all realize that 1.8 million people visit Dana Point every year? They spend $600 million in our city and generate $35 million in local and state taxes. Is it any surprise to anybody that 40% of the money that comes into the city is from tourism? And number 1 on that hit parade is the TOT. So you want to know why we need this? Our hotels do not cater to families. They don't cater to people who want to come here. They're catered to conventions. I have many friends that work in that industry. They don't give a hoot about mom, dad, and 2 kids. They want a convention with 500 people at the Ritz or the Monarch. They don't care about mom, dad, 2 kids want to come to Dana Point and enjoy the place and go to our restaurants and rent surfboards and rent bicycles and enjoy the beach and enjoy the place and go back and home and tell their friends how great it was so they can come and enjoy it. I don't understand what people have against families that want to come here. Do you not like people? Do you not like people that come here that are just want to have fun and hang out and enjoy the California dreaming for a week? Isn't that what Dana Point's all about? Number one, right now, we're in a COVID crisis, and you need to support your local businesses. We need to get those restaurants open. We need to get the retail shops open. Everybody that caters to tourism, they need customers. Well, where do you think those customers are? They're not the locals, and they're not the long-term renters who are 99% of the problems everywhere around town. You're talking about 3 cars in a driveway. That's not somebody that flew into John Wayne and drove 1 rental car down. That's not a short-term rental problem. So come on, folks, let's be honest about this problem. The problem is not short-term rentals. The problem is NIMBYism. People just don't want this in their backyard because they don't want to be good hosts for the city. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Lynn Gardner, will you please unmute your mic and please also state your place of residence?
Hi, we're the Gardners, and my name is Marilyn and Gardner, and this is Len Gardner. And we own a 2-story, 1,700 square foot home in the Lantern District near La Cresta and Golden Lantern. It's our only home, and we bought it in 2014 and remodeled it extensively with the idea that we actually would be interested in doing short-term rentals. So we became permitted short-term rental and began using the Airbnb platform in 2015, at which time we started to file our quarterly TOT tax reports and make payment to the city for all taxes owed. We strive for excellence in our work and obtained a good following, building up a long string of 5-star reviews from our guests. We also maintain very good relationships with all of our neighbors, both sides of us and across the street. Within a couple of years, we earned the Superhost badge from Airbnb and have maintained that level of outstanding service for the last 4 years. Our rental consists of a guest bedroom with an ensuite bath to short-term visitors. We only rent while we're at home. In the past, we occasionally have rented the whole house when we are away for about a month at a time. At that time, we had our neighbor across the street managing it, and she would in turn immediately get on her cell phone if they needed anything or any approval. We were on the other end, whether we were in Seattle or Hawaii. It was always a good experience on both ends. Our home has a 2-car garage with 2 additional parking spaces in the driveway, meaning that guests don't compromise street parking. In the 6 years that we've been providing our STR service, we've never had a complaint of any sort from any neighbor. We carefully screen our guests as they will be living in our home, and our home has never been used as a party house. This year, due to COVID, we retrofitted our guest suite with a new refrigerator, microwave, and eating table, as well as upgrading from a queen to a king bed. We added additional lighting to our side yard and our backyard so that they can enter safely and securely without any direct contact with us. We really love the contact with the people and we miss it, and we do see them and we greet them with our masks on. But for now, we've adapted to this and our occupancy is way down, but we are still committed to having our Airbnb and maintaining our Superhost status. We are retired and our rental provides a modest supplement to our income. But in addition to the extra income, we both enjoy hosting and meeting guests coming to Dana Point. We feel like ambassadors to our beautiful city and regularly provide referrals to eateries and local places of interest. We ask this commission to recommend that Dana
That's for 3 minutes.
residents continue to operate legally permitted homestay STRs and resident-owned STRs. Thank you.
Okay, Susan Hinman, will you please unmute your mic? Also, Susan, will you state your city of residence?
Hello, I'm Susan Hinman, a longtime resident of Dana Point. This concern that I wanted to share with you. The 40% revenue from TOT is really a significant part of the city's revenue. And I think that most of that revenue is from our hospitality sector, not from the short-term rentals. And it appears that collection from the short-term rentals is a problem. I noticed when the Coastal Commission approved the hotel complex just recently at the old Cannon's restaurant, it was a unanimous vote. And one of the reasons it was a unanimous vote is because the percentage of affordable rooms in that complex was very satisfactory to the Coastal Commission. So I think those issues are being addressed. Secondly, I am very concerned that short-term rentals deplete the housing availability for those who wish to live and work in Dana Point and be involved in their community as participants of the city of Dana Point and the community. I think that's a very big threat when we bring in people who are there now and then. It doesn't enhance the credibility and the value of community. The third thing is, in my neighborhood, people watch out for one another. And if there is someone that appears to be threatening, they report it. I don't think with short-term rentals that I think we're going to reduce the community caring and the interest and involvement in our community. I think it's a real threat. I'm very, very concerned about the future of this community if we're not allowed to work together as a community and live and work with the hospitality industry. Thank you.
Luann Biggs, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Oh, hi, I'm in Capo Beach. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. I ran an Airbnb with my home that I live in, and, very regulated. I would only rent to families, people coming in for weddings that needed a one-story home with the grandma and whatnot. It helped pay for my twins' college. Capo Beaches does not have HOAs. I mean, we're a community that we support each other and we respect each other. And I wouldn't run, this business about it being a hotel is ridiculous. It's your own, if you want to regulate it in a way that it's people who already, live in their home most of the time, then they're going to care about it. We have an RV that we stay in when we were renting it out. I just feel like it's taken away freedoms for people when they can't use their home to supplement their income in some way. And it's your home. Why would you trash it? And you can see from your own statistics that there is no criminal activity going on. There is no parties. It's just people, like Fred said, that are coming in to enjoy our community, families, and they want access to a pool or a bike or whatever. And how can you limit homeowners who want to, get ahead a little bit with their house and pay for college for their kids, or maybe supplement a retirement income. And you're already taxing, the city's already getting the money from us. So yes, have the regulations, but shouldn't anyone who's a homeowner be able to do what they want with their home? As long as it's easy and clean and not disrupting others. Your own data says others are not being disrupted. So I would like to jump on with Fred and Cheryl and say, yes, regulate more homes to do this. Everybody should be able to do it if you're a homeowner. Thank you. That's all.
Joseph, will you please, Joseph, please state your last name and your city of residence.
Jose, hi, this is Joseph Murphy. We're on my phone, but I'm here with Jose Preciado. And from the city of San Juan Capistrano, works in Dana Point. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jose Preciado and I live in San Juan Capistrano. I work as a cook in Laguna Cliffs Marriott Hotel. Please do not allow short-term rental where the owner or renter doesn't not live there. They are not affordable to work people like me. I would love to be able to stay overnight by the cost of, or I have my family come to stay near. But isn't it realistic for me to rent a whole home for $500 for one night? This proposal is still bad for working families like mine. We can't afford to lose homes to luxury vacation rentals. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's nonsense.
Okay, Carol Kelly, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
My name is Carol. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Carol Kelly. I live in Dana Point. As you work on a proposed short-term rental pilot program, we have some concerns as 30-year residents in District 4. The city has demonstrated its inability to oversee the behavior of STRs since the city has had difficulty in collecting fines. Over a 3-year period, only 27,000 or 22% of assessed penalties were actually collected. Do not increase short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods when the city is already having difficulty collecting fines and responding to and enforcing violations. Some STR owners are using partitioned kitchens and living areas in order to have them count as living spaces to increase the number of guests allowed. This should not be allowed. STR guests may have large parties and occupy all the parking in the residential neighborhood. STR guests do not move their cars during street cleaning days, thus polluting our harbor and ocean. Most of the STR noise problems occur at night, and an outside investor is not going to drive to the site at midnight to handle the problem. Therefore, it would increase the need for police intervention. Therefore, we need to hire and train more police. Hotels are built in commercial zones and can handle these problems. Members of the Planning Commission and City Council members who are involved in the STR study should not be allowed to have an STR permit, since this would be a conflict of interest. Residents will not know who is coming in and out of the neighborhood 2 or 3 times a week. Hotels have the staff to handle the conduct and security of their guests. Short-term rental owners do not. This will increase the workload for the police, thus requiring us to hire more police people. Residential areas should not be rezoned to allow short-term rentals. Thank you.
Lynn, will you please unmute your mic, state your last name and city of residence?
My name is Lynn Smith. I've lived in Capistrano Beach. I graduated from college in Fullerton in 1972, and I moved down here at that time. In 1976, I bought my own home, and I've lived in it since then. I want to, a lot of the things I was going to say have been said by other people in the community. I want to say that in San Clemente, if a neighbor has caused enough problems that the police have been called numerous times, they put an ordinance sign in front of their house that they cannot cause any disturbance for 6 months. So they're serious about it. And I don't think, as Fred said, we're not being honest, that we don't like short-term rentals and they don't cause a problem. We are being honest. And we've had experiences, and I don't like to be called dishonest, actually. Long-term renters are good for the community. They work in the hotels, they work in the businesses. So just because a long-term rental may not be as well kept as a short-term rental, that's cosmetic only. And I don't think that should be a reason to allow short-term rentals at all. I like what Susan Hinman said, and the Gardners are good examples of short-term rentals. I agree. They live on the property, they enjoy the hospitality, and that seemed like a win-win for sure on short-term rentals. The city of Laguna Beach recently, the Coastal Commission approved their ordinance to allow very limited expansion of STRs in mixed use or commercial areas only. Many coastal cities have severely restricted the ban on STRs because enforcement is impossible and too much burden on the ordinary residents and neighborhoods. In 2020 of July, contrary to the Coastal Commission recommendation by the Commission's staff and subcommittee, the council expanded the short-term parameters against what the Coastal Commission said. The city council was elected to serve all residents, not expand due to SDR owner lobbying. The small city council has no right to deny the residents voting rights and decide for us. 3 city council members on our council on STRs, they should be disqualified from voting and excuse themselves. So I basically agree with everybody of what they said, and I don't want to take up more time. And somebody talked about the soul of our city being sucked out. When you do this, just look at downtown with those giant buildings. Talk about soul sucking. It just is not.
Lynn, that's your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jordan Abraham, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Yeah, of course. I'm over on Capitol Beach, Jordan Abraham. How's everyone doing? So I don't have any prepared statements, but so we live here because of a STR. We came to Dana Point because we discovered the city back in 1996, renting it with our family. We realized it was one of the greatest towns in the world. And our neighbors are permitted STR, and we love it. It's great. I've gotten to see firsthand people from all over the world come to Dana Point and discover it and realize how great of a place it is only because of STR. We've never had any problems. Everyone's been respectable. I've heard a lot of comments today, and it seems to me a lot of those comments seem to be more concerned with protecting corporate hotels and keeping certain people out of Dana Point rather than actually caring about the community and the individuals who live here. I was really moved by Len Gardner. What right do we have to tell Len Gardner what she can or can't do with her house that she paid with her money for? I'm not, once again, we live right next door on Beach Road to an STR. I can look at my neighbor's window. We've never had any problems ever with them. It's been actually an absolute delight having people come in, discover the city, I get to see firsthand how, I want people to know how great Dana Point is. I want them to come here and I want them to discover it. A lot of these, I've heard a lot of comments tonight that don't seem about Dana Point. They seem about individual people trying to tell other people what they can do, and that doesn't seem right to me. It seems restrictive, and it just doesn't seem right to me. Yeah, I mean, especially right now with COVID, who are we to, if we care about our residents, if we care about people here, let's allow them to, responsibly make money off the property that they own. They have the right to make money off their property, and especially in trying times, who are we to tell them what to do with the houses that they own? Let them, if they need to do it, let them do it. I don't see how that's wrong if they're doing it responsibly. Yeah, I mean, if there's problems, fine them. If there's, regulate it. But I don't think I have a right to tell my neighbor what to do with his house. And I disagree with a lot of the comments that have been put forth. And, the data's there, the science is there. There hasn't been a lot of complaints. There hasn't been a lot of problems. I don't really know what we're talking about here. But anyways, thank you. That's all I got to say. I love this town. I love everything about it. And I hope that more people can discover it.
Thank you.
Antonio, will you please unmute your mic, state your last name and your city of residence? Antonio? Okay, we're going to move on to Tony Nelson. Please unmute your
Antonio's
mic
getting on right now. Hello?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about
Okay.
that. So
It's okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
Can you
you.
hear me? Yes. Okay. My name is Antonio Alzati, and I've been working at the Laguna Cliques Marriott in the banquet department for 20 years. I live in Dana Point, in the beautiful city of Dana Point. And I was laid off due to COVID after 19 years, COVID-19 after 19 years of working. The workers in my industry are risking their lives to help the industry recover. We do not need more of us to lose our jobs to short-term rentals. Please do not allow more housing to become hotel rooms, especially during this pandemic. Please also use the strongest enforcement tools possible. Thank you.
Okay, Tony Nelson, please unmute your mic and state your city of residence.
Allison, before you start my timer, I'm not sure how you want to handle this. I was also asked to read a comment for Sandy Iverson, who couldn't be here. Do you want me to just read mine now and then I'll put up my hand later for hers?
Chair Opal?
That would be fine if she uses the 2 slots for herself and Sandy.
Oh, you'd like me to do both right now?
I'm fine with that because yes.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so here's Sandy's. Sandy Iverson is a longtime resident of Capistrano Beach. Sandy says, hardly a day goes by in Dana Point when there isn't someone on Facebook or Nextdoor seeking long-term rental housing. There's little to no rental housing available in our city and the surrounding communities, plus hardly anything is affordable. California has a severe housing shortage. By 2018, we ranked 49th out of 50 states in housing units per resident. This shortage is estimated to be 3 to 4 million units. So is it any wonder Dana Point residents are having trouble finding housing? According to demographic data on the city's website, 38% of Dana Point citizens live in rental housing. In Lantern District, a whopping 55% are renters. Lantern, along with Capitol Beach, account for the vast majority, 75%, of existing STRs. This is not surprising since these are the 2 districts with almost no HOAs. District 1 has 29, with all but 3 in condos in Monarch Hills. District 2 has only 6, and District 3 has 2. Isn't it ironic that the representatives of those districts, Mueller, Vixoric, and Federico, are the 3 councilmen who voted to deny us a vote on whether residents want STRs? They are secure in the knowledge that such a policy will have little impact in their own districts while unfairly encouraging investors to convert needed housing into mini hotels in Lantern and Capo. Almost half of the current STRs are located in multi-unit housing. This is another sign that renters will be unfairly burdened. Think of the incentive to a landlord to evict long-term residents. It will be much more lucrative to convert to full-time vacation rentals. We know that. So what if residents lose their housing, especially low-income renters? This is exactly why the Coastal Commission did an about-face on STRs. Our council, staff, and even our planning commissioners have been insisting that they're only pushing STRs because the CCC is making them do it. We know this is false. The Coastal Commission is on record saying that STRs pose a threat to housing stock and cause nuisances in neighborhoods. That's why they've been pushing homestays and limited STRs in commercial areas only. They were just fine with a homestay program in Dana Point. It's council, not the Coastal Commission, that changed that. Renters need to be considered in the process or your workshops are a total sham. And please stop blaming the Coastal Commission for pushing STRs. They are being pushed by investors along with some of our council members and no one else. Thank you. That's from Sandy. Let me get some water. Don't start my timing. Okay, now it's me, Tony Nelson, Capistrano Beach. Short-term rentals are a very contentious issue in Dana Point. I believe this is because there is some inherent unfairness. First, the city intends to honor the CC&Rs of HOA properties, as they should, but seems to have no respect for the rest of us. In most cases, HOAs outright ban STRs, and it takes 2/3 to change the rules. For the rest of us, the votes of only 3 councilmen can change our zoning and the quality of our lives, whether we like it or not. It is fundamentally unfair to honor zoning for some citizens, but create a second-class group and force them to change their zoning to accept businesses next door. Ironically, even HOA residents who, like the rest of us, don't want mini hotels next door, can't always rely on their favored status. Illegal STRs crop up everywhere, even in HOA communities. A second type of discrimination occurs because of districting. Those of us in Lantern and Capo, where there are almost no protective HOAs, have no recourse against the 3 council members who have denied us a vote. If we're unhappy, we can neither vote against them nor directly recall them. Ironically, districting was established to give better representation to minorities, but Lantern District, the area that has the largest percentage of minorities, 55% of whom are renters, will be the hardest hit with the loss of housing stock. 3 councilmen who represent 3 districts that together account for only 1/4 of STRs will make a decision for 2 minority districts that will suffer 75% of the burden. This represents domination of the majority over the minority, and it is grossly unjust. A third type of unfairness exists because ordinary residents, the people who live, go to school, and vote in Dana Point, will bear all the costs of STRs. Lost housing stock, nuisances, potential loss of property value, but we get no benefits. All the financial benefits accrue to STR investors and their managers. Even if you succeed in creating a robust enforcement plan, who wants to live next door to something that even requires a robust enforcement plan? The burden of STRs in residential areas is borne by the neighbors, not by the investor. Any program that foists all the costs on one group while granting all the benefits to another is clearly inequitable and should be rejected by any fair-minded leader. Are all citizens of Dana Point to be treated equally? Or do we become second-class citizens because we don't live in an HOA or one of the majority districts? We need a council that treats all constituents fairly and equally. Every one of us matters. Thank you.
Diana, will you please state your, or unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
we can hear you.
excellent. Okay. Hi, sorry. I have a child that's on distance learning, so I'm on my headphones. So I've been a resident for 20 years. And I have several points I want to bring up. That the first being that residents should be allowed to vote on matters that could have potentially wide-reaching and long-lasting effects on our community. By allowing the city council alone to make this decision is essentially silencing and disregarding over 30,000 residents. We should all have a vote in this matter to make a more informed decision for all of our residents. If we don't do that, it casts a shadow on our city council and the way we do business in this town. I love this town. I've been here forever. I've owned, I've rented, I've done both ways. The other issue that I have is the timing of this is terrible, honestly. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah, we've all been sacrificing. We've been isolating. People have lost jobs. They've lost income. And by putting this and expanding this STR program would literally be taking property off the market, and the inventory would be minute for the people that work here. And that's just not acceptable. We've sacrificed so much for the greater good of our communities. But you want to open a revolving door to SDRs and allow more 2 to 3 day stays of people coming in and out during a health crisis? It makes us feel like our efforts have all gone to waste. I mean, I have 2 children here on distance learning. We've done everything we can to prevent and to help our community and our neighbors to not be infected by this disease. It's just a really bad idea. This should have been tabled until at least another year. Not only that, but this pandemic has amplified our housing crisis considerably. No one is moving due to the moratoriums, the evictions, and the fear of the unknown. The inventory is so limited that I can't even find a new place to move for my handicapped daughter who's in a wheelchair. I don't need stairs anymore, and I can't find anything in this community, and I've been here for 20 years. And it makes me sad. The SGR program would just exacerbate this situation. I brought up my concerns with the housing shortage with Mike Frost
Diana,
last
that's
year.
your 3 minutes.
What's that?
That's your 3 minutes.
Okay.
And could you
Well,
also
thank
say
you.
your last name, please?
Yeah, it's Diana Schwartz, and I actually live in the Lantern District, which is highly affected by the STRs that are aesthetically pleasing, but don't replace the quality of life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darlene Carney, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Hi, I'm Darlene Carney, and I live in Laguna Beach, Laguna Canyon. I have owned in Dana Point since 1993, and I would just like to thank the city. I have nothing planned to state. I see both sides of this matter. When Laguna and the Coastal Commission were considering short-term rentals, what was it, like 8 years ago, I was asked to sit on their panel, and then I had a multiple sclerosis attack and thankfully had to leave. But it is my understanding, and probably I need to get these facts correct, is that each city needs to prove how they're providing affordable housing in their city, or there's a withholding, and this is just my understanding, and I could be wrong, but a withholding of monies from the state and feds if there isn't the straight of housing in the community. I have a short-term rental. I'm not making tons of money. I'm sitting here now. I sit here often. I keep it only because my dad has had heart problems for life. I have multiple sclerosis. I'm on parking lot level. I wish I lived in an HOA that managed things better. I'm sitting here for these 32 days because I had a tenant, and I'm appreciative because I thought those already were all regulations for short-term rentals. And I feel that the city is very strict. I'm very strict. I have a rental agreement that states how many cars, how many people, their driver's license names. I give them to the gate. The gate this last month decided to issue 2 28-day permits for people not on my list without calling me. And I have a little lawsuit in my mailbox too, because I made the short-term 32-day guest leave. So I don't understand. Way back when short-term rentals started and there were only like 12 or 20 of us. And the only reason, I have to be honest, I have one, and I'm very candid about this when I'm in the community and to the city, is because the members of the board where I own in Monarch Hills own short-term rentals above me and next to me, and it was Party Central. And with a $500 and $600 discount a month back then, in what, 96, 99, I could not keep a nice long-term tenant. So it is a fine balance. You need an owner and a property manager who's there all the time, that answers the phone calls in the middle of the night. I joke with this city and tell them I'll be down on my broomstick, you know, not that they're even informed because the neighbors call me directly if there's an issue. But I feel for both sides. I mean, I would not.
Darlene, that's your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to both sides. And thank you for having these.
Kim Tarantino, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Sure. I'm Kim Tarantino and I live in Capistrano Beach. So there's one thing that before I start into my my notes that I've made, I feel like the data that was presented by code enforcement was incomplete. Looking at public records, over 500 complaints were filed for short-term renters. That's a whole lot more than the 4 or 7 or 9 that are on that report. And now I know that code enforcement doesn't talk with the sheriff's department. There's no communication there. That still doesn't sidestep that, or that still doesn't excuse and doesn't help the residents. So I do think, and you know, there were a lot, I listened to all of the recordings of your meetings in January, and there were a lot of items in there that I think would be really helpful to describe to the listeners tonight, such as code enforcement 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You call them up on the weekend, you might hear something on Monday. If there was a loud party Saturday, well, it's probably not still going on Monday. So I just think there's a bit more disclosure that would be appreciated and helpful. Now, what my question is why is the city so eager to allow more short-term rentals in the cities, especially when I did research, cities all over the nation, all over the world are severely restricting, if not outright banning, short-term rentals. Now, it's a relatively new phenomenon, so you're not going to find court cases going back to the 1960s or 80s or whatever, but there are cases now, and there are a lot of studies now because there's so much concern about the impact on residential areas. So then I was curious, well, what about our neighbors? This was my search, and what I was looking for were short-term rentals in residentially zoned neighborhoods. San Clemente, no. San Juan, no. Laguna Niguel, no. Laguna Beach, well, we know that just changed, no. Newport Beach, very restrictive regulations recently imposed. Irvine, no. Huntington Beach, according to the information I saw as of last night, no. I did a bit more research and found that the short-term rental costs to local residents seem to greatly exceed the benefits. The claim that short-term rentals add a large number of tourist days in areas is unfounded. 2 studies, including one by Morgan Stanley Research, found that 96 to 98% of Airbnb customers, that's who they surveyed, 96 to 98% of them said they would have gone to their destination anyway, even if there would not have been a short-term rental. Another study from the Economic Policy Institute found that accommodation cost is not a huge issue for many American families. Now, my other point here is that Dana Point.
That's your 3 minutes.
That's it? Okay.
Thank you.
Jill Fabricant, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Jill Fabricant, and I'm going to even start my video. I live on Dana Strand on top of the hill. Now I live upstairs. Downstairs I have 2 rentals. I rent them. I've rented them over the past probably 10 years or 11 years. I've rented short-term at times. I rent long-term. Long-term meaning 1 month or 1 year. I've had no problems whatsoever with short-term renters. I'm not doing that now. I rent now 1 month and more and longer. Especially during COVID, I've wanted to do this. But the times that I did rent short-term, I had absolutely no problem. I was upstairs. It was easy to get to answer a problem or concern if there was one. But the people, and I must say, at least for myself, for that amount of time, I had more trouble with long-term renters, more difficulty with 2 of them over that period of time than I've ever had with any short-term renters. The renters have always been very careful. They pay a lot of money for the condo. I keep it up very, very well. They appreciate it. They come back every year. It's the same people. I have a lot of repeat visitors, probably 70 or 80% of my business is repeat visitors. And I think that if short-term renters are managed well, then there's absolutely no problem with them. And I think it's nice to have in the community, and they help pay rent, and they add diversity to our cities and to the Strand Beach. It's nice having people coming and enjoying where we live and bringing their friends. And I think it's good PR for the city. That's all I have to say. I give my time to someone else, so it won't be such a long evening. But I wanted to make that point that short-term renters and short-term rentals are, I think, an advantage and a benefit to the city if they're managed with a resident, with someone with on-site management.
I'm going to have to agree with that one. On-site management is.
Thank you.
Martha Leonardi, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Hi, my name is Martha Leonardi. I have a property in Dana Point that I've owned for about 18 years. And I have, my husband and I spend several months out of the year there. We retired, we used to live in the area. And, you know, I hear a lot about people staying in hotels and so forth. And I have a very small unit, and the majority of my renters are retired people, and they really couldn't afford the hotel stays, you know, at the local hotels. They're very pricey. And so I've never had any complaints. I do have an excellent management company. I appreciate the issues that other people are having. And I certainly understand, you know, how difficult that would be. But, you know, for my particular clientele, often they're coming because they're visiting their children and they want to have some place that's a little more private. I don't have stairs. So for my own situation, you know, everyone has been lovely. They have been courteous to the neighbors, and they, you know, they're eating in the local restaurants, they're shopping, they're spending money in the community. And I'm able to maintain the property because when they leave, you know, we're in there and the property is in excellent, it was remodeled, it's in good order. And it's a property that I bought with the intention of doing that. So I own the property, and I'm very, you know, I know my neighbors and they know our situation. They have my phone number. I've never received a call, but for many people, the only way for them to enjoy the coast is to have something like that available to them because they really couldn't stay at the Ritz-Carlton or, you know, what used to be or now I guess it's the Monarch Bay Resort. It just wouldn't be affordable and they wouldn't be able to enjoy the town.
Have you ever had a hospice?
Have I ever what?
I'm
Have
sorry.
I ever what? I'm sorry, have I ever had a what? Oh, I thought someone was asking me a question.
Continue, Martha.
I thought someone was asking me a question. So
I
anyway,
was.
Oh, and what was the question?
A hospice.
Have I ever had a hospice?
Yes, I had a hospice set up next to my house.
I'm sorry, only the person who is speaking should be speaking. There's no questions for this. It's really just.
No, I mean, I actually, at one point, I was approached by a treatment center who wanted to take the property as a like a supervised sober living, like with a minder, a person with a minder, and they offered me a considerable amount of money, and that was not of any interest in me, but that would have been legal, but it wasn't something that I wanted in my property. But
that was 3 minutes. Did you want to finish your thought before we got on a question?
Yeah, just that, you know, I mean, short-term rentals for many people, it's the only way they can get to the coast. They can't afford the expensive hotel rooms, and particularly for senior citizens who are trying to get out of, you know, cold weather. Maybe they live in the Midwest or whatever. And it's a nice thing to be able to offer them. And I have repeat people and a great management company, and I've just never had any problems, and I've had the property a long time. So that's all I have to offer. Thanks.
Christy Abraham, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Hi, thank you. Christy Abraham, I'm actually related to Jordan Abraham, and I live in Capistrano Beach. I really appreciate you putting this together because there's so many perspectives here that I was not aware of. We've lived in Capistrano Beach for 28 years. Prior to that, we rented a home down there, a variety of different homes along Beach Road, where we enjoyed our family. We brought new people down from, we live in Palos Verdes as well. And so we brought people down from Palos Verdes. Some of them bought homes there. We enjoyed San Clemente. We've gone to Dana Point. We discovered a whole new world, and it was fabulous. And after about 6 years of renting homes on Beach Road, we decided we would buy a home on Beach Road. It's been fabulous. We've loved it. Like I said, we've been there for 26 years. It was a rental home when we purchased it. It had been, I mean, I think people have been renting homes on Beach Road for probably about 50 years because my friends' grandparents rented homes on Beach Road. So I think back in those days, maybe about 60% of those homes were rentals. They're very close to the ocean. A lot of people just wanted to go there on vacation with their families. It was great. I mean, people got experiences with the ocean they've never had. People came. It was a big pull from Arizona and Utah and all different parts. So it not only was fun to be with people that were local residents, but to meet people from everywhere. We continued with that tradition up until 2016, whenever they sent us a notice saying we were no longer allowed to rent out our home, but we would rent it out for maybe 8 to 10 weeks a year. We created friends with a lot of these people that were renting our homes. They bring their families there. It was a wonderful experience. And you could walk down Beach Road any summer day and you would see kayaks and surfboards and kids. And it's just been a fabulous community for people. Now, I can only speak about Beach Road. I cannot tell you what it's like for people that are dealing with short-term rentals in other areas. But after listening to what everybody has said here tonight, I would think maybe a really good approach to the solution is, if you're going to give people permits, then make sure that they don't break the rules. Like, take their permits away if they get 3 violations. Make it very difficult for people. If they're going to do this, if they're going to take it seriously and they're going to allow people to use their homes, which are now, I can see people are saying, these are my residences. And I think my son said earlier that we have people that are next door to us. It doesn't bother. I mean, I actually really enjoy meeting new people. I think it's been great. It's been an enrichment, and they're very kind and very great families. And if there's ever a time when they, you know, it's a little late and maybe they're on a different time zone, I'm like, hey, you know, we're going to go to bed. Do you mind if we just turn out the lights and you guys just...
That's your 3 minutes.
Okay, anyways, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm saying that I think there's a way to do this that would satisfy all people. And I'm hopeful that you can find a resolution, because I think it would be very sad if families can no longer rent a home at the beach. I don't think we're threatening hotels. And I think Beach Road and Dana Point, it's a way of life. And I hope that we're able to find a way that we can all go forward together in unity. That's all.
Charlene Brown, please unmute your mic and state your city of residence.
Okay, hi. I thought I was going to be next. My name is Charlene Brown. I live in Dana Point. My neighbors and I, we live on a street. It's just one street, and we're very close to the beach. We are in an HOA, and I am still not clear. Do our HOA rules state 30 days or longer? Does that take precedence over an Airbnb next door, which is what I have right now? It does, definitely. Okay, so if there is a problem, like right now we have an unpermitted Airbnb next door, would we still contact the city because we're running into problems? Yes, okay. Obviously, because it's next door, and it's been different license plates every few days, it's a pandemic. I don't know who's here. We have children in the neighborhood. When I bought my place back in 1985, I did not want to have be in a prospective situation where there would be renters, you know, in the different homes. And I can see kind of the future if things, you know, let's say we weren't in an HOA, we're still having trouble, and we are in an HOA. Let's say we weren't. I don't want to live on Motel Row, bottom line, and my neighbors don't either. And that's, you know, that's why I haven't worked all my life to own this place. And there are other motels around. There's the Marriott Courtyard. I've stayed there, beautiful suite, $200 a night. You know, there are other options for people. So hopefully there will be a way for the city, for people who aren't in HOA, to find a resolution for the residents who bought their homes and you know, didn't want people renting, you know, day after day, or where they can rent one night and one night. I have a friend who had an Airbnb. She had 5 stars. She only picked guests who were 5 stars, and she had it for about 2 years. She quit. She had friends, her guests would have friends who would bring over friends, and there was drunken parties, and it was a nightmare. And by the way, she never complained because she didn't want to lose her 5 stars. She didn't want to get a bad review back. So a lot of times there are problems and people don't say anything. So that's just a perspective, you know.
Here, here.
Your 3 minutes are up, Charlene.
Thank you.
Deanna Slocum, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Hi, hi, I'm Deanna, and I have a short-term rental in Dana Point in the Lantern District. It's a very quiet home where I take very good care of who I allow to come into my home. And so when I hear of people talking about a housing shortage, I wonder, why would that be an argument against short-term rentals? I am a property owner who's put a lot of money into my home, making it beautiful, much nicer than it was before. And it's beautified the neighborhood because more of the property owners are doing the same. Why would I want a small minority telling me what I could do with my home? Is the next step, is that slippery slope that they will tell me who I can sell to or who I can rent to? So I want to be very mindful of the fact that this is my property. I chose specifically not to purchase in an HOA because I wanted the freedom to be able to do with my property what I needed to do. This will be my retirement home, so it is something that I care very much for. I choose to rent my property to families visiting from outside of the neighborhood. The family that is from the community, the family that is staying there now has chosen my home because they want to stay there for a longer time and they like the community, which is very residential, and they're looking to buy. So they need more time to be able to do that. They don't want to stay in a hotel. They can't stay in a hotel because they have 2 children, and those children are homeschooled, as most children are today. So other guests that I've hosted over the past months have been in that same situation where they have been displaced or they need to stay in a short-term rental because they've got necessary home repairs that are occurring, such as slab leaks. The hotels are not an option because they're trying to homeschool. They've got dogs, they need a kitchen. Sometimes short-term rentals do provide a service that the hotels cannot accommodate. And let's be clear, short-term rentals are not new. In the 70s in Laguna Beach, my parents used a short-term rental or condo. There was never an issue, and they used to do it through the penny saver. At least now, with Airbnb and VRBO, we have the opportunity to find a lot out about our prospective guests before they arrive. I Google extensively. I even do background checks. I make sure I know who's going to open that door to my home. My guests will not come to Dana Point if they have to stay in a hotel. They usually are bringing a dog, and the hotels are not necessarily dog friendly. And we also need to be clear about the enforcement statistics. Many of the complaints that were the larger numbers, the 3-digit numbers that we're hearing about, are due to unregulated rentals. The regulated or permitted rentals have negligible true violations. In 5 years, I have never had a complaint. However, the long-term renter next door has absolutely restricted the use and enjoyment of my property.
Deanna, that's your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I grew up in Laguna and they stopped that policy in the 80s.
Donatella Polizzi, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
We live in Dana Point in the Lantern District, and I'm really surprised because all I've heard, and there are very good points on both sides, but why should people who do short-term rental be only people who bring nuisance? It's like as if only terrible people were to do short-term rentals, while I am the first who does usually go on vacation using VRBO or Airbnb, and we are a normal family, just not wanting to have the experience of a vacation in a hotel, and we prefer a home, which is nice. It gives you a different feel of the city. So this surprises me. So how about renting to people who have small children or pets who bark or maybe of disturbance? Are we going to forbid renting to people with pets? I don't think so. And so, long-term rental. Another thing which is very important is that I think that by allowing short-term rentals, there is a possibility of keeping the urban situation of a city as it is. Otherwise, sooner or later, all these houses are going to be changed, and what we see now may not be true in a longer term. So allowing people to have an income through a property and forces these people to keep the houses in a great condition. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to rent them. Furthermore, hotels tend to be much more expensive than Airbnb, apart from offering a different type of offer, especially to people in their 30s and 40s who are looking also for to staying with friends, or people who are older and want to have the possibility of having grandchildren over. This is very important to me, that being able to afford a vacation in a nice place, in a quiet place, being able to bring your pets with you, being able to say, okay, I have last minute my grandchildren who want to come over, and I can do that. In a hotel is a very impersonal situation. Another thing which is surprises me too is that there is no issue for I think it's called transitional living or sober living, but there is an issue for short-term rental. Isn't sober living also maybe a source of issue or worry? HOA. When we bought our home, we made a choice not to buy a home where there is HOA. And so, because we want to be able to use our home as we please without having to spend almost some time.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay, sorry. So, but basically, I think that short-term rental should be allowed, and just controlling it so that there is no issue for people who are worried about dangers of nuisance or problems. And so everybody can enjoy the beautiful city.
Brian, will you please unmute your mic, state your last name and your city of residence?
Hi there, Brian Randall, Dana Point Lantern District. And I think I'm gonna tie right into Deanna's comments. I've been operating vacation rentals in Dana for about 8 years. And I was at one time operating about 22 vacation rentals between San Clemente, Dana Point, and Newport. I'm a member of Vacation Rental Managers Association. I think Ken Pilati, you're on here today. He's a member as well. You know, it all boils down to management. It really does. You know, 7 years ago, the Coastal Commission said that Dana Point actually had like the gold standard of the vacation rental guidelines and policies. And to be honest, they haven't changed that much since then day. But it boils down to enforcing what you actually have written already. And, you know, you put in your 30-minute, phone call person that has to get there. You know, Deanna talked about vetting your clients. It's absolutely true. You have to vet your clients very well, very carefully. I decline probably 50% of the requests that come in on my property. I'm down, and by the way, I'm not doing 22 properties anymore. I'm down to just my single property that I own and operate of my own personal building. And the big piece is vetting those people and then following through and making sure that the guidelines are being adhered to. I really think the city needs to just focus on the rules that they have and enforce the rules that you have, and things will go well. Someone else mentioned, don't punish the few for the don't punish the mass for the few. You know, everybody who's operating legally, legitimately in this group are doing quite a great job. And I've had in 8 years, 0 problems at my property. And I actually have a council member that lives diagonally across the street. So, you know, it's all how it's handled. It's all how it's managed. And if it's done well, there are no issues. Now, we'll say this, knowing that I've operated a lot of units, larger units can be more difficult to manage. It's true, but it is all about who's managing it, how the follow through is occurring, and the vetting process. And you go from there. Dana Point has always been a vacation rental destination. Every beach community started off as a vacation rental destination. Vacation rentals are not new to this town. It's what built the town, and it's what continues to support this town. I'd be very cautious on some of the data. Okay, thank you.
Christopher Wu, will you please unmute your mic and state your city of residence?
Hi, Chris Wu here. I live in Venice, California, but I've also got a second home in Dana Point. So, we've obviously heard both sides of it. There's people who believe they should have full control of their home, their property rights. There's also people that want to completely ban short-term rentals. I think the point of this workshop really is to get people together to find the reasonable compromise. I think the city council has agreed that we should allow short-term rentals. I think we all agree that regulation is good. It allows the city to put together a set of rules that benefits the majority of people. The point here isn't to penalize the majority based on the actions of a few. I think the ordinance currently, just looking at it and living in other cities, it has the fundamentals of a great ordinance. It bans parties. It puts limits on people. It puts limits on cars. It holds homeowners accountable. If people get certain number of violations, they lose their permits. These are all things that work in other cities. These are all great foundations for a regulatory policy. I think if we can, increase the enforcement of these, that's a great, that's a good opportunity and a way to improve. But I think, a short-term rental ordinance, the way that Dana Point currently has, is a great starting point. It's got the fundamentals. It doesn't punish the masses over, the minority and the extreme views of the few. And, I think, opening it up and giving people the opportunity to earn a supplemental income, bringing the city of Dana Point additional income as well, letting other people from other cities enjoy what Dana Point has to offer. Those are all things that we should all look forward to. And so, I believe what we currently have in the ordinance is a good starting point. And if there's anything we want to tweak, it's maybe increasing the enforcement aspect of those rules. But otherwise, I think the productive thing and a good compromise is to sort of stick with what we know has worked for most of us. That is all.
Okay, and then we had Barbara Wilson. Did you want to speak for Denise Iger?
Okay, sorry. I'm speaking for Denise Iger. I am unable to attend the meeting tonight and have asked Barbara Wilson to read this comment on my behalf. Thank you for the opportunity to provide my comments regarding short-term rentals in Dana Point. I have owned a home and lived here for approximately 10 years, and I'm also a lawyer and have represented homeowners associations exclusively for 25 years. At a time when other cities are looking at ways to eliminate short-term rentals, I'm baffled by Dana Point's continued insistence on opening the door to outside property investors and the myriad of problems that come with short-term rentals. Over the last several years in my law practice, the single most requested amendment to my homeowners association clients' governing documents has been to ban STRs. This is not happening by accident. The notion that most out-of-town STR landlords do a good job is simply untrue. Frequently, we find that most of the out-of-town landlords are in fact out of the country. They use online booking and do little more than arrange for the cleaning crew between visits. Neighbors are left to call the homeowners association, call the police, lock their children indoors, close their windows to block out noise and smoke, pick up the trash left behind, and hope the next renters will be more respectful. In extreme situations, neighbors find people passed out in the street, naked in jacuzzis, or mistakenly trying to enter the wrong home in the middle of the night. The solution being proposed seems to be citations and fines. Homeowners associations have that power too, and guess what? It does not work. STR landlords do not do this to make the world a better place. They do it for money. A fine is just a business expense. It can be made up with an increase in the rental rate. Maybe the landlord will not rent to the specific group again, or maybe they will. VRBO and Airbnb are not doing any screening, so who knows? I hear that people, they say, cannot afford to live here without renting their place out as an STR. I simply do not believe this to be true. Long-term roommates or ADUs are the solution to affordability crisis. What these people are talking about is the ability to live here and also travel the world while their home is being rented. This is not the same thing. We do in fact have a housing shortage and an affordability crisis. STRs contribute to that problem. Maybe we can stop inviting problems into our residential communities and instead support the existing hotels and resorts and the responsibly bringing guests and their wallets to this wonderful town. And to clarify, currently property rights to rent your home in Dana Point for less than 30
Barbara,
days
that's 3 minutes.
is not part of the allowed in Dana Point at this time under code. Thank you.
All right, I believe that is everyone who wished to speak. So thank you all for your comments. I know this is a.
Hey, I'm sorry. I've had my hand up a dozen times, Mary, and it keeps coming off, and I've been waiting patiently.
I'm sorry.
Same here. I've also been raising my hand throughout this entire meeting and nobody's called on me as well.
Ditto. The hand comes off, so if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. So
Followed by me.
Betty,
Thank
go
you.
ahead and speak.
What I'd really like to say is let residents vote. That would resolve this controversy, because the vast majority of residents will not be operating an STR. Yet residents will bear the burdens. They'll be taking the risks, while the SDR operators actually receive the benefits. So that doesn't really seem particularly fair. So residents are going to be asked to give up, all residents will be giving up their zoning protection that prohibits STRs from operating in their neighborhoods. Some residents will be risking their family's safety and quality of living. Maybe the SDR person who rents their home is a good person, maybe not, but it's a risk. They'll risk the property value of their homes, which is their most important investment. And in fact, the most important issue, I think, is that long-term renters that represent close to 40%. Thank you, Mr. Jordan Abraham. I was very nice to you when you were speaking. Long-term renters could lose their homes because STRs have been shown to adversely impact housing. So any outcome in this process is inherently unfair, but that does explain a lot. It explains why so much money was donated by STR operators and real estate PACs to help elect city councilmen. And that may be why current councilmen voted against allowing a public vote, knowing it wouldn't pass. But the ultimate unfairness is that most residents are probably unaware of this process going on. Adopting an STR program will affect every resident and change the character of Dana Point's family-oriented neighborhoods. Residents, not STR operators, should have the final say. So I'll get back to my point. Solve this mess by giving residents the right to vote. They deserve it. Thank you.
All right, I'll go with Miriam next, and then Jim, I'll have you follow, okay?
Thank you. My name is Miriam Repke. I am a resident of Capistrano Beach. I am a short-term rental homeowner and property.
Yeah, I'm going to stop video.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do I need to continue or do I need to start again? People
Go
don't-
ahead and continue.
Okay. So I am a property owner and property manager in Capistrano Beach. I've been involved with this since the beginning, well, back in 2015. And I've been very active and I've heard all sides, and I'm sure, those who are for and against have heard, our story as well. We own a duplex in Capistrano Beach. Just same as Deanna, I heavily screen my renters. I turn probably about 40% of renters away. My neighbors are all, in good standing with me. I'm in good standing with the city. I've never once had a complaint. I think a lot of the people who are against short-term rentals, seem to be voicing the same concerns: parking, noise, trash, all of which is going to be addressed by this new ordinance, this pilot program. So really, all of these issues will be addressed, but it just seems to be this fact that they don't want to give it a try. It's their neighborhood. It's really not their neighborhood. It is our neighborhood. And at the end of the day, just as you have your property rights, we have our own property rights as well. I purchased a home in Capistrano Beach. I am not a foreign investor. I'm not somebody who's out of town. I live 2 blocks away from my home. I'm very actively involved. So I don't believe that, they should have the right to tell me what I can and cannot do with my property, especially if I have a property that's in good standing and I'm managing it properly. I do believe that there should be rules and regulations in place. I've been involved with the ordinance and what they've been doing in Newport Beach because I manage a few properties out there. And I think some of the things that they've done in Newport Beach, we should do in Dana Point. For example, you can't have a property listed on Airbnb or VRBO without an active permit. So once they made this policy in Newport Beach, unless you registered your property on Airbnb or VRBO, your listing was taken down. So all of these unpermitted short-term rentals, that would essentially eliminate them. Also, if you have violations, you would get your permit revoked. So I think, what this pilot program is offering is going to address a lot of the issues that, those who are opposed to short-term rentals, it would address these issues. To some of the comments that others have made that, we've been short-term rentals and PACs have been heavily donating towards city council members. Betty, we know that you and your husband have actually heavily donated to council members. So really that's the pot calling the kettle black. So I'm sorry.
And that's our 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, okay, Jim Shad. Okay, oh, yeah, there he is.
There we go. Thank you very much. I wasn't going to comment tonight, but some of the things that I heard, I had to make, what do I have here, 5 points. So the first thing that I come away from this meeting with is that the quote unquote bad stigma that's attached to the short-term rentals doesn't match the reality of what we're being told, that they're not as bad. They're not all frat houses. But I do sympathize with the people that are having problems. And to those people, what I would say to you is that that's an enforcement problem and we need to deal with that. And I am on your side when it comes to enforcement. I would like to see people that drive around with decibel meters and follow complaints and really get to the bottom of things. But secondly, the people that want to vote on this, there's a philosophical unfairness when you have 144 renters and you have 30,000 voters. It will never pass. And so majority rules is not always the best way. And then I think out-of-town owners should have a local contact. What else do I have here? I'd like to know how to get involved in the working group. I'm in the Doheny Village working group, but I would like to know how to get involved in this working group as well. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone who raised their hand who did not have an opportunity to speak? If you can
Yes,
raise your
William
hand.
Gata. Could
Okay.
for some reason, I could not get in.
All right, so go ahead, Bill.
Since I'm the last one, and I tried to get in during the fray/skirmish.
All right, Bill, could you give us your name and where you live before you start? I'm sorry.
Sure, William Gate. I live in Mission Viejo and in Dana Point. I've owned the property in Dana Point for probably over 30 years. I have to say, I'm really surprised and somewhat disappointed in some of the attitudes of people that think Dana Point should be almost an exclusionary province for the people who either live there now or either own or rent. Dana Point is a beautiful town. It was a very, very small town when I first acquired a property there. Everybody wants to come to Dana Point because of its beauty, and we need to share it with other people. And I think what people really don't understand or not taking the time, go look at renting a room or two at the Marriott or any of the other hotels for you and your family and your 2 or 3 kids. And then go look at the cost of renting a 1 or 2 bedroom Airbnb or VRBO. It's probably half, if not less than that, aside from all the fees that are on the other hotels. We're giving incredible access to our beautiful town because of the Airbnb and the VRBO properties. There have been 4 complaints that have been registered and cited on short-term rentals. I don't understand what the problem is. I hear a lot of people who have just spoken who have talked about what they have heard and what other statistics have said. And I think we only heard one person tonight who voiced how he was negatively affected in his HOA that has the ability to throw out anybody who's got an Airbnb or VRBO. I'm sure there are some problems. I'm sure the city can do a better job of cataloging any true enforcement issues, but we need to lean on the data. The data is not there that there's a problem. I'm quite surprised. So I think the council is doing a great job. Keep up the good work. I'm disappointed in the long-term and short-term residents of Dana Point that want to be elitist and exclusionary. I'm shocked that people don't want people to come to our town. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. We have Aletha Vargas. I can't see the rest of your name. Allison, is it possible to unmute Alethea?
I sent her a request to unmute, but
there
that's
she
all I
is.
can do.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, I'm actually driving, so I want to keep my eyes on the road. My name is Alethea Vargas Flores, and my family and I have lived on Beach Road since the summer of 2018. And I just wanted to let you know that at the time that we purchased our home, my 2 daughters, my husband and I, we are sandwiched in between 2 B&Bers. Not only did we not know that the home we purchased was next door to 2 B&Bers, it was, needless to say, every horrible story you've heard has happened to us, including renters taking our furniture, barbecuing on our property, drunken, and just so everybody knows, Beach Road is not an HOA. It's run by a district. So whenever we have an issue, whether it's drunk people literally walking in through our back doors into our home, taking our furniture, 2 o'clock in the morning, name it, we have to call security. Security comes, handles it, and then we get basically the renters cussing us out the next morning, throwing trash on our driveway, throwing things at our windows. And we've been going through this since the summer of 2018. I do not have a problem with the B&B now that's to my north because they know that we're there full time and things seem to be getting better. And thank God my neighbor to the south, she lives there full time. So now we just deal with constant B&Bers through COVID. They rented out their home through COVID times. There's always somebody. We have advised the district, they do the best they can. So I just want to let you know, not all of us that live in Dana Point are against it. What my family's issue is there's absolutely zero enforcement. I have complained, it's in writing. Definitely, everyone wants to hear what the issues are at the city of Dana Point. They've been awesome. Same thing with the district. But for the gentleman who just spoke and said, oh, there's no complaints, sir, you are completely 100% inaccurate. I have complaints all the time from them walking to our property, entering our home, going through our garage, going through the sides of our home. I could literally go on and on. So my wish would be enforcement through any entity, whether it's through the city, the county. I just wish somebody would listen to our complaints, and that's what I have to say.
Okay, now I'm hoping that we've gotten through everyone. I do not see any more active hands.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Okay, and now I'm sorry, I'm trying to see. Donna was your name?
Yes, Donna Dossick. I just have a really quick thing. I live on my property in Capital Beach and I have a casita and I'm all for Airbnb. I've done it for 5 years in DC and I never ever had a problem with my neighbors. The market in DC has collapsed due to the pandemic, and renting for over 30 days in this pandemic has caused me more issues than I can ever imagine due to the lack of me being able to evict the non-payers who squat on my property and destroy it and cause problems with my neighbors and have parties, etc. during COVID, which I have excluded from my lease contracts. Anyhow, the city can easily pull a license if the terms of the Airbnb contracts aren't enforced, and it's all about enforcement and pulling a license. If the owner isn't going to abide by Airbnb, pull their license and let the responsible people continue, and don't force us into bankruptcy. And I feel like right now Dana Point is forcing me into bankruptcy for me not to be able to, get a second income. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try this again. I think that everybody has had a chance to speak.
Did that make sense? What?
All right, so I do again, thank you all for your comments. That's the purpose of this workshop, is to really listen to everybody, to hear what you have to say before we make any decisions or any recommendations to City Council. At this time, I'm going to open it up for commissioner comments. If you guys want to add any comments, we're not voting on anything tonight. It's really just a workshop. So if you guys want to speak, Eric, would you like to make any comments since you're leading this committee on our behalf?
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman Opal. And thank you everybody for showing up tonight. We're 2.5 hours in and, we've gotten some really good comments. I first want to acknowledge city staff for all the work that has gone into getting us here tonight. We've been working on this for about 4.5 months, and certainly don't want to forget to acknowledge Commissioner Donor for all the time and effort that he's put into this as a subcommittee member. So we started this first phase process, like I said, at least 4 months ago, with the goal of updating our current business regulations to address permit issues and the issues that we've heard raised throughout the community in the past, as well as a lot of the discussions that have occurred tonight. And I've said this in some of our stakeholder meetings, but my personal experience does not mirror what I heard tonight. I live in the Lantern District and I have an STR on one side, and I have a normal rental unit / duplex on the other side. And in my case, my STR neighbors are far superior than my long-term renter neighbors. And it changes with time. Right now, we've got a few good renters, but in the past, we've had people where we've had to call the police on a weekly, if not nightly basis. And we've been stuck with those people for well over 30 days, in many cases over a year. Now, that being said, I have another neighbor who lives across the street, and he's had the absolute opposite experience. He's got an STR, or had an STR, that was continuously causing problems. And from what I understand, ultimately was shut down. But the truth is, and we've heard it all tonight, we all have our own individualized experiences with STRs. And I think that certainly shapes the way we view these things and how we form our own opinions. And while we've got a lot of work to do on this first phase, I'm extremely pleased with the effort to engage the community. This is the most robust discussion I've seen on this topic in a long time, and I'm frankly excited to see it move forward in some form or fashion, and look forward to the continued input and the discussions as we work to refine possible changes to our business regulations that go ultimately to City Council in the coming months. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time to provide your input and feedback. I think we've heard from all sides, those who are for them, those who are against them, and everybody in between. And I really appreciate everyone who's taken your time and encourage you to stay engaged. You know, the more engagement, the better the process. The more people that are involved, the more people we hear from, the better off we all are, I think, as a society. So lastly, my hope is that once this phase of the process is complete, we can continue as a community to work collaboratively on what will be a much more detailed, complex, and controversial process as we attempt to determine what's right for Dana Point with regards to future STRs. Do we want more? Do we want less? Those are all discussions that are going to take place in the future, and I encourage everybody to stay engaged in that process. That's all my comments for tonight.
Will this video be available on the city website?
Yes, all city meetings are videotaped and up on our YouTube channel.
Thank you. Commissioner Donor, do you have any comments that you'd like to add?
Well, you're on mute.
I would echo Eric's comments. I appreciate the fact that everybody hung in there and gave their opinions and gave us more input. And also, I'd like to point out that our goal is to try to come up with a solution when we have people on both sides of the issue. It's something we can all live with. And in a democracy, the majority doesn't overrule a minority's rights also. And I think that's something we have to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Donor. Commissioner Murphy, do you have any comments to add? Just a reminder, you're muted, so if you want to speak, unmute yourself. All right, I'll take that as a no. So thank you very much again for all your comments tonight. Really appreciate it as we move forward. Brenda, is there anything that staff would like to add about next steps before we move forward to on the agenda?
Yeah, sure. So what will be happening is we will be compiling the comments we heard tonight and share those with the Planning Commission. What I think we should probably do is for the Planning Commission to be able to digest a little bit what we heard tonight and then come again and talk about this in more detail. So I foresee us having possibly 2 more meetings with the Planning Commission before we will be asking for you for a formal recommendation. And probably the next time the Planning Commission will be discussing this, the soonest would be the second meeting in March.
All right, thank you, Brenda. So moving on in our agenda for this evening, we have no current new business. And then Brenda, do we have any staff reports?
No staff reports for tonight, thank you.
And then do we have any commissioner comments this evening? No?
No comments from us.
Great, thank you. So with that, I will adjourn our meeting until March 8th. Thank you again very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.